It's great. I actually do like sort of going later in an event because I get to hear people's stories, and then I start thinking about how my story relates to their story, and that story touches that piece, and I feel sometimes like I'm a weaver. And so I thank all of you that told your stories before, because that's now the warp that I will weft in and out of. And I just feel like I need a little bit of a joke for me, just to sort of, relax me a little bit. So I was thinking about our teacher, and I was thinking about a friend I played hockey with. And she came to the locker room one day, and she said, "This funny thing happened to me. She was teaching up along a bit, and she was driving to work that day, and she almost hit a moose." And then what that does to you. Your heart goes like this. There's our heartbeat from earlier. And she was teaching grade 5, and she went in to the classroom and said, "Students, you wouldn't believe what happened on the way to school. I almost hit a moose." And then one young boy puts his hand up and goes, Miss, was it a female moose or a male moose?" And obviously she was still a little bit shaken, because she said, "Well, I didn't get a very good look at its genitals." So then the grade 5 guy puts his hands up again and goes, "Miss, antlers, miss, antlers." So antlers. I spend a lot of time in wild places and wondering about what the wild things are and what wild things we might meet. And this summer we had the great privilege of doing a 3,080-kilometer canoe trip. And I thought actually that any long journey, as we know, starts with the first step. And in our case, it started with the first paddle stroke. But as we all know, there's those big adventures that we're being invited on, whether they're actually literally in the wilderness or maybe they're about taking some very next step. And we know what it's like to be there on that edge. And we know what it's like when those little butterflies get going. It's like, whoa, I just wish they would fly in formation. And so there we were in Jasper, and it was time to launch. We'd been planning this expedition for months. We'd dried food. We'd driven 2,000 kilometers in 2 days to get our boat. And there we were at the launch. And we weren't sure we wanted to launch anymore. We could hardly eat breakfast. We could hardly, we were realizing, we need one more paddle, and then we're running around Jasper trying to find one more paddle, because that was somehow going to make it okay to launch. Thank God there was one paddle left in Jasper. And it made a great difference. And we launched, and off we went. And we had, as you do at starting something, it's always good to mark that moment. And so we got someone to take our picture. We're standing beside the canoe. We got Delilah, the adventure pig. That's another story. And then the kind photographer says, "Well, where are you going?" And we're like, we're not going to say that we're going to Tuck at that point, because we can hardly believe that we're actually even going to put this boat in this river. So we said, downstream. And we didn't actually know. And the way that we coaxed ourselves to start this big trip was to say, well, we'll get on the water and we'll start paddling. And so one day became 2 days, and 2 days became 4 days, and 4 days became 8 days, and 16, and I'm sure if we do the math, we'll get there at some point. But there were all these little moments, and the reason I called this little story Home and Away is this was an interesting thing, because you had to launch forth over and over and over again, because we kept going through these little towns, and they were awesome because they had coverage. And when you have coverage, you can Instagram the pictures. That's cool, and people will tell you nice things, and they follow along and cheer you on. But we had to leave the safety of the town, of the harbor, over and over again. It was kind of like, oh, cool, we're home. We're in Athabasca. We saw some cool students I taught. They were very nice to us. They fed us. We got to go again. We got to Fort McMurray. Wow, first time I saw Newfoundland of the West. Again, some wonderful people took us in. We ate. It was awesome. And then we had to go again. For 90 days, we had to make a home almost every night in a different place. And we had to make where we were each night that home. We had to find that safety and that security that we all need, mostly inside of ourselves, but also in this amazing world. And I often have seen those stars we heard about in the story, those stepping stones, that Big Dipper. This trip was very interesting because we didn't see a one, because it never got dark. So you had to figure out how to go to sleep at night. And then there was the interesting moments, like when the bear came in the middle of the night. But of course it was after we didn't get to camp in this one spot because of the muskox. I mean, I know how to do a lot of wildlife things, but I got off on the beach and then all of a sudden there's a muskox. I'm like, I have no idea what to do. Turns out, just get back in the boat and keep going. Except it's midnight, and you'd really like to camp. So we finally found this spot. Stop at 2 a.m., because it's late. Doesn't matter when you paddle. You put up the tent. We're like, we're going to sleep finally. And get into bed, fall asleep. 4 o'clock. And it's not Marion. I look out the window, or the tent window, because we often left it early. Yep, it's a bear. And in case you ever want to know, sitting on the ground, a black bear can look very large. So I give Marion the elbow, and she wakes up, and then it's very cute. We're there in the tent, both with our bear spray, in the tent, pointed at the doors. Good thing we're patient. It wouldn't have turned out well if we sprayed ourselves by not opening the tent door. But we were ready. So fortunately I cracked open the zipper. The zipper sounded, and then fortunately the bear went on. But of course, as soon as the bear was walking away, I got very brave at that point. I'm like, you go on, bear. You go on. You get away from my home. You go on. He went a little bit further and kind of stopped and sat down, and we're like, okay, we're done, 4 o'clock, that was a lovely 2 hours sleep, let's go on. So packed up our home, packed up everything, left home, back on the river. That was actually a very special day, because it was the day we passed the Arctic Circle, so we celebrated. And I think that's one of the other big pieces that I've heard tonight is celebrating those moments of leaving home, of making the step, of being brave. And even as we were closing in on Inuvik, we still didn't know. We still didn't say we were going to Tuk. We got to Inuvik and we still didn't know. And we met this wonderful man in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. when we paddled in. His name was Albert, and he lived in the woods. And he said, "Hi, I'm Albert, and I'm harmless." So I said, "Hey, I'm TA, I'm also harmless." He said, "Would you like some caribou?" I said, "It sounds great, we're frozen." And so we chatted with him, he showed us where we could camp, and we hung out for the 2 days we were in Inuvik. And it was him that finally said, "You've come this far, don't stop now. Keep paddling to Inuvik." And that last 7 days pushed us harder than I've been pushed in a really long time. The temperature was coming down, the wind was coming up. It was like a June day in Newfoundland. And every day we had to just keep making that decisions. Like, you know, we had another little spot. Well, we can turn around and we can paddle back still, and we won't have to call someone to come get us if we want to quit. It's a good thing, actually. The people we called to say, "Will you come and fetch us if we get in trouble?" was $1,200. I was like, yeah, we're not going to pay that. It was like, okay, let's go. We saw the window, we went. And then we had this day. We paddled to a place called Whitefish Station. And we had a big day. And the night before we said, we need 2 good days. It gave us 1. We got to Whitefish Station, paddled up to this wonderful cabin. We said, "Do you know what the weather forecast or what the weather is?" And she looked at us like, "It's beautiful, duh." I said, "Okay, how about tomorrow?" She said, "You know what? If you're going to paddle to Tuk, you better paddle tonight." So 6 o'clock, we'd already paddled 10 hours. We said, we're going to Tuk. We left. We had to beat the weather coming in at about midnight. Of course, it came at 10. There was all these points to get around. The ocean, we were on the ocean at this point. It's kicking up. It's asking everything of our paddling ability. We're getting wet. We're getting cold. And we step out at one point and onto the tundra. And the tundra was amazing. And I looked and I said, oh, look, we've just paddled 3,000 kilometers to get home. Because it looked just like here. We ended the night 1:30 in the morning. The sun was just setting behind a pingo. If you've never seen a pingo, it's like a big volcano. And we were cold. We were almost shaking from the hypothermia. But the most amazing feeling of having chosen for 90 days to have left home 90 times, to be out there paddling by ourselves, to aim for this legendary place in our mind called Tuck. So we've all got a Tuck, and I invite you to leave home on occasion, hopefully with some buddies, hopefully with some loved ones, but leave home so that you can, as someone said, it's always hard to say goodbye, but we need to say goodbye to come home again. And so thank you very much.